Good morning, Year 10. I have attached for you a PowerPoint which will cover 2 of your language lessons. It covers the entire Component 1 paper. So there is a Section A, a reading section, and a Section B, a narrative writing section for you to complete. As well as this PowerPoint, I have attached as Word documents a copy of the extract and the questions. If you haven't got access to Word, right at the end of this PowerPoint, I've copied the extract onto the PowerPoint, and the questions are all within the PowerPoint as well. So nobody hasn't got access to either the extract or to the questions. So as I said, ladies and gents, this is a Component 1. We'll be looking at an extract from the novel American Gods by Neil Gaiman. Obviously, there'll be different activities to do throughout this PowerPoint. You will need to pause it. Make sure you set yourself your timers. Only work for the time that I've asked you to. Otherwise, it kind of defeats the object of working to timings for when we think about our exams next year. Okay, let's move on. Right, so ladies and gents, first things first, we are always going to be faced with the same type of question 1 questions, where we have to read a certain number of lines and we have to list 5 things we learn about an individual or a place or a setting, and it's worth 5 marks, and we have 5 minutes to do this. So first things first, we need to list 5 things we learn about shadow in these lines. Obviously, if you've printed the extract off, that's better, but I have on each of these slides put the part of the extract that you need to answer these questions. So obviously, we are looking for implicit and explicit information. We've only got a few lines to do that. So what I'd like you to do is read through these 3 lines, 4 on this PowerPoint, and I would like you to find 5 things that you learn about shadow and make a note in your book. You can pause me while you do that. Once you've done that, you can move on to the next slide. Right, okay, so here's the next slide. So what I did, and what I always do and encourage all my students to do, is before they start to write is to make sure they've got a highlighter. You need it for both your literature and your language exams. If you haven't got one, can you make sure you've tried to get one before we return back to school? I have highlighted for you all the different ideas that you could have picked for question 1. Sorry, someone's just interrupted. Right, sorry, I had to pause my lesson whilst the people came into, I don't know what they were doing. Anyway, right, so sorry, back on track. This is the extract. I have coloured in red for you all the ideas that you could have taken for these 5 marks, all right? Everything that you could have written. Now, it's all very well just highlighting things. It's all very well just listing down things you learn about shadow, but what you actually need to make sure that you do is that you write your responses in grammatically correct sentences. So if you see, now appeared on your screen, I'm hoping, if not, press enter. These are the possible choices that you've had. So they are short, concise sentences, but they are grammatically correct. So Shadow had been in prison for 3 years. I haven't just copied out Shadow had done 3 years in prison. I've put it into slightly better grammar. He was a big build. His biggest problem in prison was filling time. He kept himself fit. So I have used the information from the extract, but I've put it into short, concise sentences. You need to make sure that for these 5 marks, you have written short, concise, grammatically correct sentences. So now you've seen mine, I want you to mark your answers against my answers. If you've written something other than what's here, you don't get the marks for it, all right? There's only a certain way of saying what the answer is. Copying it out but not enough of it to make sense isn't going to get you marks. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Right, so question 2. We've got more lines to read. Like I've said, ladies and gents, I've attached this to as a Word document. You do always need to make sure you've read through the entire document extract before you start answering the questions. I know at the moment that it is possibly quite tricky for you if you haven't got access to Word. You can, because I've put each section here, just use this for now. But normally you are encouraged to read the entire extract before you even start working. So, sorry, question 2. Read lines 4 to 15. How does the writer show that Shadow is positive about his time in prison? So again, this is only 5 marks, ladies and gentlemen, like question 1. But this time you need to write in a full paragraph. And I know that some of the lessons that I was sent when we looked at question 2 last time, you responded in a similar kind of way to question 1. Question 2 needs to be a full paragraph with grammatically correct sentences, with quotes embedded if you can. But it's only 5 marks. So it doesn't need to be pages and pages and pages. So first things first, ladies and gents, I want you to read this extract here, or take lines 4 to 15 from your printed Word document. I'd like you to read through, and I'd like you to highlight if you've got a paper copy. If not, make a note of words and phrases that you might use to answer the question, what shows Shadow is positive about his time in prison? What are the positive things that we can say Shadow took from his time in prison? So once you've paused me and you've done that, it's only going to take you about 5 minutes at the most. Move on to the next slide. Okay, so here's the next slide. The same with question 1. What I've done is, rather than me just writing the answer for you, I've given you some ideas. So I've changed the colour of the font. We've gone to red for all the possible quotes that you might think about using to respond to this answer. Now, you could have picked more, but these are the main ones that if I was writing it as a student, I would have picked to use. So have a look. How many of my ideas have you got already? If you've done really well and you've got a similar number of ideas, then that's brilliant. If you haven't, that's not a problem. Have a look and see what you could have picked instead. And then what I want you to do, and I've not written you a sample answer for this because it's 5 marks, I would like you, ladies and gents, to press pause, and I'd like you to just take 10 minutes and write an answer for this. What's positive about Shadow's time in prison? So we know he said the best thing is actually that he's now got a feeling of relief. He can't get any lower than he is. And he doesn't worry that he's going to be got because he's already been got. Things can't get any worse for him. So have a go, ladies and gents. Press pause, answer the question, and then move on. Okay, so question 3, lines 16 to 32. This is where we move on to the 10-mark questions. If you remember from our lessons previously, questions 3, 4 and 5 are worth 10 marks. So, because they're worth 10 marks, your responses need to be longer. Your responses need to be about a page of A4 writing. As you practice these more and more, you will probably find that you are writing more and more, which is absolutely fine. We need to be aiming for hopefully a page, page and a half, possibly by the time we get to take our exams next year. Right, okay, so our question here is, what impressions do you get of the prisoners in these lines? So first things first, what do we mean, again, by the word impressions? So what are the prisoners like? What do you, as a reader, think about the prisoners? And you need to find words and phrases in this section of the text to support your answer. Do they all get on? Are they sad about where they are? Are they bitter about where they are? I want you to read through this and find words and phrases that you could use to tell me what you think these prisoners are like. So press pause while you do that and then move on. Okay, so ladies and gents, not huge, not like question 2, not as much in this response, in this extract, I think that you could use as a response. You have to be really careful about how you phrase a response for this. So I decided that I would possibly be talking about a particular prisoner, because we have one named for us. So I've highlighted him. I've highlighted that he has a scarred smile. That's going to be important for me. That is kind of an oxymoron or juxtaposition, if you want to think about that. The idea that they make jokes, that they have this gallows humour. If you don't know what gallows are, they are the frame that's used to hang people, and gallows humour is a type of kind of morbid humour. So these prisoners are finding humour in their situation. He makes a joke about prisoners dying with their boots on. Shadow doesn't really understand it, so it's explained to him that it's gallows humour. And then there's some more conversation. And the prisoner says, the country started to go to hell when they stopped hanging folks. What does that make you think about him? Does he not count himself in that bracket with everybody else? The idea that Shadow shrugs, how could you use that? What does that show you about him? And that he found there was nothing romantic in a death sentence. So maybe he's more realistic than the other prisoners. And then right at the end, the idea that he thinks that if you just hang in there, somebody's going to have to let you go. That's what he thinks about prison. Just put your head down, do your time, get on with it. So they are the quotes and ideas that I would be writing in my response. What I'd like you to do, ladies and gents, is I'd like you to use mine, yours, both, I don't mind, press pause, have a go at answering that question for 12 minutes and no more. If you don't get to the end of it, that's not an issue. Just write for 12 minutes and then I want you to move on. Okay. So there are a few people that asked the other day when you were going to get some sample answers, and I did say that I would write you sample answers. I'm not writing you sample answers to every single question of every single paper that I'm setting you. It will make you lazy and it won't make you think for yourselves. So I'm aiming to do probably a sample answer every paper for different questions. So today I thought I'd do question 3. Okay, and this is my sample response. I'm not going to read it to you. You are perfectly capable of reading. So I'd like you to read through this sample answer. It's probably not a completed answer. There are things that we could add to it to make it longer. But as you read through, how does it compare to your answer? Have you put the same number of quotes in? Can you see where I've put my quotes, where I've spread my quotes about? Can you see where I've referred to the question, the impression of the prisoners? They are like this. They appear like this. Have I used some subject terminology? Doesn't have to be a lot. Have I used any anywhere? So read through my sample answer, compare it to your sample answer, and then once you've done that, we can move on. If you want to, you can copy this out and put it in your books, but you don't have to. When you've done, move on. Okay, right, excellent. So, question 4. We're moving towards the end of the extract. So we're reading lines 33 to 50, which is included on this PowerPoint. Again, it's another 10 marks. How does the writer show Shadow is hopeful about his future in these lines? So again, the same process as question 1, question 2, question 3, I need you to read through this part of the extract, and I want you to highlight, underline any words and phrases that you would use in this response. So we are looking for things that show that Shadow is hopeful. That's the key word in this question, hopeful. What words and phrases show he is hopeful? Have a go at doing that, and then we will move on. Okay, so excellent. When you respond to questions 3 and to questions 5, you will find that bullet points are included, and these are really important. If you ignore them, you aren't covering the points that the exam board want you to, and they are there for a reason. Please follow them. So let's have a look at these before I get you to have a go at writing an answer. Let's see. So we should write about what Shadow thinks about his future and the actions he takes, the writer's use of language to show his hopes and dreams, the effects on the reader. All right. So what Shadow thinks about his future. So when he first went to prison, obviously his freedom was a long way away, and it was a distant beam of hope. What are his hopes and his dreams? Well, his hopes and dreams are actually quite simple. He dreams of having a long soak in the bath with lots of bubbles. He dreams of putting on a fresh robe and maybe slippers. The idea of having slippers, it's kind of a different life. It would be one that we would possibly say is almost out of a book. These people come out the bath, dry themselves off, put on a robe, put on slippers, have a pipe. It's a quite fantastical idea that he has. And then third is to keep his head down and to stay out of trouble. So his ideas, his hopes and dreams are really quite simple ones. And you need to take those ideas and think about how they affect you as a reader. And in your response, you need to comment on how they affect you as a reader. So let's move on. Okay, so what I've done for you is the same as I've done for the other questions. I've marked off what I would have included in an answer. Okay, so like I've said, we've got this distant beam of hope, the idea that it's a magic door, and he marks off the days, even though he doesn't see the sun going up and going down. Having that calendar gives him some kind of grounding. The fact that he practiced these coin tricks, he bides his time, he keeps out of trouble, he worked out, and he made these lists in his head. But the list got shorter, so things became more important to him. Less things, but more important. And these are the things that I talked about on my previous slide: the bath, the robes, and then keeping his head down. So what I want you to do, ladies and gents, is have a look at your quotes that you've found and highlighted. Have a look at mine, and I want you to have a go at an answer. I want you just to give yourselves 12 minutes again. And because we're spending so long finding what we want to write about, we only need a short space of time now to write our answers. So in theory, before I say time yourself, write for 12 minutes, you've spent 5-10 minutes planning this answer, finding those words and phrases that you can use in a response that show that Shadow is hopeful. If you haven't done that, there is no point in you giving yourself 12 minutes, because you are only going to write the very beginnings of an answer. So make sure that you are highlighting, underlining, finding those answers before I say have 12 minutes and write. So once you've got ideas underlined, highlighted, use mine, use yours, use both of them, I don't mind. Set the timer, pause this PowerPoint and write your response to question 4. Just for 12 minutes, and then move on, ladies and gents. Okay, so there are some people that struggle, and if you are one of those people that struggle, I have written for you a opening of a sample response for question 4. So if you sat for 12 minutes and not really written anything, have another go. Use these opening lines. Shadow's hope comes from the simplicity and possibly the peace he finds in prison. It is described as a beam of hope that grows longer he is in prison. He allows issues within the prison, which occur frequently, to flow by him, and by telling himself that this too shall pass. So as well as this opening, you need to comment on how he feels this time, what he does, and comment on that list. So this will help you, ladies and gents, if you've literally sat and not done anything. But most of you won't need this, okay? Then move on. Okay, yay! Question 5, we're nearly at the end. This question requires the whole of the passage, and there are quite a few lines at the end of this passage which we've not used yet. So if you've not printed off this Word document, you need to make sure that you read all the slides at the end of this PowerPoint so you get the very end of the extract, because you need to write about something from the beginning, the middle, and the end of the extract for this question, because you're told to write about the whole of the extract. So please do write about the whole of the extract. So what is it you're writing about? You've been asked to evaluate the way in which prison is presented in this passage. So what is prison like? You've got to write about your thoughts and feelings about how prison is presented, and you've got to comment on how the writer has created those thoughts and feelings within you. Is prison a terrible place to be? Are the prisoners resigned to their time? Is there an easy way through it? Are they decent to each other? All of these questions you need to think about answering. This is all I'm going to give you for this question. I want you to give yourself 20 minutes, which means you are going to read through the whole of the passage. You're going to find words and phrases that you've not necessarily used before in your response to write about what prison life is like. How is it presented? Have a go. I will write sample answers for question 5s later, but I want you to persevere and have a go for me, please, ladies and gents. So spend 20 minutes on this question and then move on. Sorry. I did say to you that I had put a whole paper together for you. So I've added a section B narrative writing component to this. So the first part you did, the part with the extract, that should take you an hour. It actually will have today taken you longer than an hour, because I'm setting you lots of different tasks. And these whole extracts that I'm setting you are going to take you the whole of what would be your language lessons within a week, and sometimes slightly more. I'm not expecting you to do days and days and days of work, but it's easier to put whole extracts together for you. So this narrative writing section, this is 45 minutes worth of writing, okay? And that includes your planning. And what I would like you to do is choose one of the following tasks. So either number 1 or number 2, not both of them, please, ladies and gents, one or the other. You need to make sure you only write for 45 minutes. We need to try and get into the habit of making sure we stick to timings a little bit. And that 45 minutes needs to include your plan and your writing. You need to write in either first or third person and stick with it. And you need to write in either the past or the present and stick with it. And you need a beginning and a middle and an end to your writing. And a plan is crucial. And time yourself for 45 minutes. So, ladies and gents, I am not asking you to send the entire paper back to your teachers. What I suggest you do is you send either your question 5, which you've done completely on your own, or your narrative writing back to your teachers, or if you want to, both, but you don't need to send everything back to them. Okay, thanks, bye.